I'm just gonna go ahead and get that started or I'll forget.
I thought my problem is very five. The other two. Maybe five.
Okay, that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Throw it out.
I was wondering if you guys,
No pressure. Bye, Elizabeth. See ya.
well, I think we're good right now. Meg, if it becomes an issue with hearings, we can, maybe we should go ahead and just kind of come in a little more. It's just really hard to hear what everyone's saying if we're far away from the computer.
Okay, and I can ask if I can't hear something.
Yeah, that's fine. And we have a student in the 500 hour who is always virtual, and it's been a process trying to get her to the point where she can hear. And the good news is that it's recorded. That doesn't mean you'll hear everyone, but we'll just do the best we can. And
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
just you come up just a little bit closer. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. This is so exciting, and it's exciting for me because this is the first time I've taught, any part of the 200 hour. I'm Susanna Azaro, and I teach at the Himalayan. That's not what I do full time. I could not survive if I had only taught at the Himalayan. I teach for a cyber school full time. I'm a teacher at a cyber school in Pittsburgh, and that's what I've done my whole career. And in 2012, 13, I did the 200 hour, and it was great. And I just stuck with the Himalayan, and I teach once a week. I taught Hatha 2 at first, and now I teach Hatha 1 on Sundays, and I do stuff at my school sometimes, mindfulness, meditation, sometimes I teach workshops, but it's been a great experience, and I'm so excited. This group seems phenomenal. So what I thought I'd have you do, even though I know your names, just go around and how about you tell me your name and a takeaway from yesterday. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a feeling, it could be a fact, but just a takeaway. So do you want to start, Deepthi?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, you already said my
Yes.
name. Yeah. So I think I was yesterday, the whole day, right? Towards the end, what we did, the healthy workout, I think that really gave a lot of information.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, other things were like going all over. It was a lot to process. Just that I was able to understand because we were able to do it on the mat.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the Ashwini Mudra.
Abby is so good at that.
Yeah.
We're just going around and saying name and takeaway from yesterday. I'm gonna backtrack and come to you.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I'm sorry.
So
I
what,
mean, now,
yeah, you can go.
So I'm Kate, and I retired 2 years ago. And then was last year during the lockdown trying to figure out what to do.
It's just your takeaway from yesterday, Kate.
Oh,
We're not going through the whole.
You can just say it.
What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is I'm trying to figure out what to do with the next third.
Okay.
You know, like in the hockey games, like this is the intermission, like for the next, hopefully it's third.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, I totally understand that point. I'm an empty nester, and so, yeah, I'm there, right there too. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Abby, and one of the things that stood out to me yesterday was the 4 steps of teaching. So I never really thought about it, but then once I started thinking about it more, I was like, oh yeah, that's like everything, and I was like thinking about it when we were practicing earlier, like during the practice bit, and it was just like, yeah, we just keep doing these 4 steps.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that, and we're gonna come back to that today. And yeah, it's like there's a process for everything. It's like writing a 5-paragraph essay. It's like it's perfect. Yeah, that's a great process. Okay, moving on.
Colleen, and my takeaway was I gained an appreciation for trying to explain how to do a pose to someone. because it seems simple and I've been doing it forever. But when you really try to break it down and tell someone how to do it who wouldn't know how to begin, it's very much more difficult than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's difficult and you've got all eyes on you and it just, like, when I do breaking down postures in teacher training and have to, because I'm in the 300 hour right now, I feel like I've never taught before. It's like, okay, thank you. Moving on. God, I caught you right when you took a bite.
Gretchen. And my takeaway was how much I realized that I don't know about yoga.
And 10 years from now, after you've taught for years, you're gonna be like, oh my God, there's more and more and more. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's humbling. Okay, moving on. Oh wait, I missed Meg. Meg, I don't know if you're able to unmute, but if you are.
Yep.
What's
Can
it?
you all hear me?
Yep. We were just talking.
Okay, great.
From yesterday.
My takeaway is kind of like Gretchen's. Like, I was like continually just fascinated because there's so much to learn, and I love how certain things that I have a slight interest in, like chakras and meditation, like will fit into this learning. And it was just like I said, kind of like profound and fascinating to me.
Excellent. I'm so glad.
So I'm Christine, and I think my biggest takeaway was that this isn't as scary as I thought it might be. While I think it's definitely going to be challenging, and like others had said, like breaking down the poses and kind of thinking about how to teach them that way, will be challenging. This isn't as, I was very nervous to start it, so
Yeah.
I feel much better about it.
So did Kate get you up teaching then? Okay, yeah, you're gonna do more of that today. So you get to practice more. Okay, wonderful, thank you. Ann?
I'm Tracy, and the biggest takeaway for me, and I actually thought about this morning because it was kind of shocking, or it was a revelation maybe, was all yoga is hatha yoga. Like I still can't wrap my head around that. I'm like, all this time I've been practicing yoga, and I thought these different forms were, the different forms, and there's all these subsets to yoga.
Yeah,
Like, no, it's all hatha, starts up here and then they break out.
yeah,
So I had no idea. That like blew me away. I don't know why, but that blew me
That's so
away.
great. I'm so glad you all, it's just gonna keep unfolding like that too. You're gonna be like, mind blown. You're gonna have so many moments like that. So today is going to be, there are 3 different sections I'm gonna facilitate. The first is 2 parts. We're gonna look at certain standing postures, and we're gonna kind of deconstruct standing postures in general. Look at, understand the benefits and cautions. We're gonna talk a little bit about modifications. And you're going to, we're just gonna spend some time exploring and looking at a particular category of standing postures. And then you're going to use the 4 steps. Do you remember them? What's the 4 steps of teaching? Instruction. Refine. Yeah. And release. And I just think of it as SIR. It's like SIR, the acronym. Yeah, set up, instruction, refinement, release. And so we'll be using that to then we're gonna deconstruct a couple of the postures, and then I'm gonna have you scatter and you're gonna teach each other. You're gonna pair up and teach each other a posture. So that's that part. And then then a little bit later, it's slated for 3:30 to 4:30. We're gonna look at lower body asana fundamentals. So we'll talk about that later, and that'll be more experiential and discussion and experience. And then we'll end with from around 4:30, we'll do a final relaxation, and then you guys can go eat candy and give it out. We're not talking about all of the standing postures today, we're just talking about a particular category. There are 3 categories of standing postures. What do you think they are? They have to do with, 2 of them have to do with hips. Yeah, no problem. Balance is one of them. Yeah, balance is one category of standing postures. And then 2 of them have the word hip in them. Oh, close, flip flop it, open hip. And then what's the opposite of open? Close. Yeah, so there are 3 categories. There are open hip postures, closed hip postures, and balances. And today we're going to be looking at the open hip postures, not all of them that exist, but we're going to be looking at the basic ones. So just out of curiosity, might as well skip over here. What do you think are some of the basic open hip standing postures? What's one of them?
Warrior 2.
Yes, Warrior 2 is one. Do you know the name for Warrior 2, the Sanskrit? Yes, Virabhadrasana 2. And okay, so that's one of them. What's another one? That is a great thing. That's not one we're going to be covering, but yeah, that would be open hip for sure.
What'd you say?
Goddess.
Nice.
Yeah. Talking more along the lines of your basic Hatha 1-ish standing postures. So we've got Warrior 2, Trikonasana, triangle pose. That's another we're going to look at today. What is one more? We're not talking, well, okay, what's an open hip balance pose? Tree. Yes.
Tree.
Yeah, great. Do you know the name for it? It's another V. Vrikshasana. Yeah, and I'll spell these out on the board. I had to revisit, we'll come back to them and I'll put them up on the board. Vrikshasana, Vrikshasana. And I've seen it without the H too. So, but that's how it was in the manual, so.
Vriksha means tree and then asana means pose.
Awesome, I'm so glad you're here. You should help us with this.
You have an advantage.
Yeah, exactly, we're fair.
Let's see, maybe just few I know, that's it.
Yeah.
Here and there.
What's another open hip balance pose? Yes, absolutely. Do you know the name for that?
Half moon, yes.
It's Ardha Chandrasana.
Chandrasana.
Yes. And then there's one other standing posture, non-balanced posture that we're going to look at that is similar to Warrior 2, but it has an added something to it.
Warrior 1.
Well, Warrior 1's closed hip. So open hip, what's something we do?
Reverse warrior?
Well, you could do, that would be a closed hip, but that's not what we're looking at today.
Side angle.
Yeah, side angle, so you're just tipping in, and that is Parsvakonasana. And I'll spell all of those out in a second. Parsvakonasana. And then there's a Parshvokonasana, and it's like, it's hard, it's very subtle. Okay, so we're also gonna touch base about Tadasana, even though that's closed hip, that's our home base for all standing postures. So we'll touch in on Tadasana, but then we're gonna look at Virabhadrasana 2, Trikonasana, Ardha Chandrasana, Parsvakonasana, and Vrikshasana. Did you learn the basic sequence of a class, the basic Himalayan sequence, like?
Some are saying no, some are saying yes.
Some are saying, so like, did Kate go over in a class, we start with centering and
Yes, she
warm up. Where do standing postures come in the sequence?
Surprisingly, after
Yes. Yeah, why surprising?
Because my experience with yoga so far has been, just the various classes, it seems to me that one reaches a standing postures, and then that's kind of like almost like the climax of the class, and then after that, you come down and it's, so I see it, like there's a lot more that's done on the floor, at least in the classes I'm taking.
Okay,
With Adrian.
okay. Adrian, as in,
And Tina,
okay,
Bob,
okay,
actually.
gotcha. Yeah, it comes in the Himalayan sequence, it comes after the centering and warm up. And I can ask Kate for more clarification about why that's the case. I have my own suspicions, and we'll talk, maybe we'll come to our own conclusion after today. So yeah, it comes after warm up and centering. The warm up and centering is what prepares our body to be able to get into and feel ourselves in the standing postures. So before we start kind of digging in and deconstructing a whole lot, let's talk about, and I'll try to do this. I think we can come up with some benefits of why we do standing postures. And I will try to write this on the board, and Meg, you're not gonna see this very well, and probably you guys won't either, but at least we'll be able to come up and take pictures if we need to. So what do you think some of the benefits are of standing posture?
Whole body strength.
Whole body strength. Great. And you can think in terms of, if you want to divide it into subcategories, physical, energetic, and mental. You can even think of it that way. So whole body strength, flexibility. I'll just put flex. Balance. What else? Focus. Ooh, yeah, nice. Focus. Yeah.
Energetic.
Energetics, like energizing.
Yeah, moving the circulation.
Yes, okay, this is not working already. I'm gonna have to buy some new ones for this. Okay, energizing, that's not working. Try one more and then I'm gonna give it up. Energizing. And you mentioned circulation. Okay. Can you think of anything else that you want to add? This is a really good list here. Breathing. Breath. Yeah, definitely.
Warming, because I guess that's the part of energizing.
Okay, I'll put warming. Yeah, and I'm just gonna add a little bit that from my manual that I was like, oh, yes. It's let's see if we hit on these. Strengthening and energizing, you hit on that. Also what it does is it helps students find out where they are in space. It helps you develop awareness about where your feet are on the earth in relation to the rest of your body. So you connect between the alignment of the feet on the floor and the limbs and the spine, pelvic floor, pelvis. It helps you connect all the pieces. And also another one is it's accessible to most people. You would think, because they use all the big muscles and they're energizing and, it might be hard for people to access, but they're even accessible for beginners. And this whole concept of, sitting on the floor, if you're doing asanas on the floor, you're dealing with people who are having a hard time with flexibility, with strength and holding their back up. But when you're standing, the postures are a little more accessible. sometimes, obviously you have to modify. And it provides, one of the big ones is that it allows you to feel what it feels like to have a neutral spine and what it feels like to have your joints stacked. So back to Kate, you were asking about why it comes after warm-ups. I'm not saying this is the reason, but one of the reasons we do warm-ups and we do a lot of the pelvic work and getting into the hips and pelvis and abdomen in warm-up is so we can begin to bring awareness to this region that is so important for when you do the standing postures. Because like Gretchen, we were talking earlier, you had mentioned, we were just talking about something totally different. You have to have awareness before you can do something, in whatever aspect of your life we're talking about. In yoga, if you don't have an awareness of your pelvis and abdomen and your spine, doing standing postures is going to be, that's what we're working toward in the warm-ups and the standing postures, being able to sense our body. So yeah, you guys came up with a great list. They're very grounding and centering. And you're using the big muscles, which is why it's heating, warming, circulation. It's good for for anxiety. If you're feeling ungrounded, doing standing postures is gonna be a really good thing to kind of get you back in your body. So standing postures, let me go ahead and write these again, or write these to the first. We're gonna touch in on Tadasana. And that's Tadasana. And Virabhadrasana, Virabhadrasana, 2, Virabhadrasana 2. And Trikonasana, Trikonasa, Trikonasana, and Ardha Chandrasana, Ard, and then Ha, Ardha, and then Chadrasana, and then Parsvakonasana, Parsvakonasana, and Vrikshasana, Vrikshasana. So those are the, yeah, you go ahead right there. Also, there are, in your teacher's manual on page 18, you will see, I think, a whole list of multiple postures, including the ones I put on the board. But those are the ones we're gonna kind of break down today. And then, do you have your mastering the basics?
Yeah.
Because they don't go over all of these in mastering the basics. But if you wanted to look at for Tadasana, they've got some nice languaging for setup for that on page 23. That's Tadasana. And then Trikonasana on page 79. And side angle pose, which part of side angle pose is coming into a warrior type position. So side angle is on page 130 in mastering the basics. Side angle is Parsvakonasana. Did I? You know what?
130.
Yeah, on page 130. And in the book, it's you will see it spelled different ways. P-A-R-S-H. B-A-K-O-N-A-S-A-N-A, side angle floors. Yeah. All right, so let me get my bearings here. Let me make sure I touch on everything. So, very grounding, centering postures. And, so we've got the setup, instruction, refinement, and release. And just in general, just knowing that they're strengthening and energizing postures. And what else did I want to say about that? Let's just go into this and just kind of break down a couple of these postures. And we're going to need a model in a second, but we're all going to do Tadasana together. So go ahead and let's just stand up and stand with your feet separated, hip distance apart. And we'll just kind of talk through some of the basics here. I mostly want to talk to you about how Tadasana is our blueprint for all the standing postures. So this is where, you know, the importance of this is for students to be able to sense what it feels like to have a neutral spine. So just stand, feel your feet on the floor. So sometimes when I'm instructing, I start from the bottom and work my way up. Lift your toes, spread your toes and let them come back down, and feel your feet pressing into the floor. And then working your way up, you draw your knees up, firm your legs. Then you draw the navel center to the spine, firm the lower abdomen. Draw the lower ribs together, broaden across the collarbone. Draw the shoulder blades down the back, lift the chin, and lengthen the neck and kind of draw the chin back slightly. So these are the things you can cue. Now, are you going to cue this in every class? You're not going to do that. But working your way from the bottom up, from the feet to the knees to the center in, firming the low abdomen, drawing the low ribs in, again, working your way up, broadening across the collarbone, lengthening, drawing the shoulder blades down, lengthening through the neck, leveling the chin, and slightly pulling the chin back. And so students will start to get a sense for what this neutral spine position feels like in their body. Then you can just relax and release. So yeah, that's, as they say in the teacher's manual, that's the blueprint for all the standing postures. So let's kind of deconstruct a couple of these. Let's take a look at, well, you guys get to pick for me. You guys get to pick what we do. Do you want to break down Warrior 2, Trikonasana? We probably won't do the balance pose. We'll either do Warrior 2, Trikonasana, or Parsvakonasana. Which one would you like to break down? And who wants to be a model? Anyone want to step up and you want to do deep? Okay, so why don't you want to use my mat? Or you can use your, yeah, okay, you can do it right there. Let me turn this so Meg,
Thank you.
see what's going on. And everyone else, we can all sit down. Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to do that, and then I was there's a buzzing and I was like, oh, I hope that doesn't annoy people, but yeah, that's there. Okay, so, let's just talk about this first. We're gonna have deep, and Deep D, you're going to, there may be times where we're talking, you're like, can I please come out of this posture now? But,
I was just thinking about it.
yeah, so you can come out at any point. But we're going to lead her through setup, instruct, refine, release. And then what I think we're gonna do is we'll just walk through those 4 steps. And then maybe have you come out. And then we'll just have you go back into it. And then we're just gonna kind of look and talk about things like alignment, what muscles are stretching, what muscles are strengthening. And then maybe we'll have you come out of it at that point and then talk about cautions, common misalignments, and possible modifications in case you've got students who this is not accessible for. And then we'll talk about counter poses. So let's have you start in Tadasana, just mountain pose. And then what are we doing? Are we doing warrior 2, Trikonasana, or side angle? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay,
I'm
what
okay.
about triangle pose? Okay, so let's walk through this. So set up. What do we do to set Deep T up? What's one way we can kind of set the posture up? Just, you can just call it out.
Step to the front of your
Okay. That's all I got. Where does she have to face?
So
What
it's
do we
like
do?
a step back
We
with your
do
left
more-
foot.
Well, no, we're doing triangle.
So you want to
Yeah.
turn, so she's.
She said take a left foot back.
Yeah.
Put your left foot up.
Okay,
Step back.
what else does she need to know?
Needs to turn her hips
rotate to the side,
to the purple and
To
the
the left.
ball.
to the side, your left.
Yeah.
More left, yes.
There we go. So one way that and I just want to say this, I am not an expert, but I've gotten used to using my mat as directional. So step to the short edge of your mat, step to the wide edge of your mat, wide side of your mat. So in open hip postures, what you could do is say face the wide edge of your mat. But why don't you just come to Tadasana facing the wide edge of your mat. And again, there are multiple right ways to do things, multiple right ways to say things. So what does she need to do first?
Step your legs apart.
A what?
Step your legs apart,
Yes, how far?
under your wrists.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. So you could say, step your feet a leg's length apart so that when you extend your arms to the side, they're under your wrists.
So about a leg length.
There we go. All right. Now what?
Turn your front foot towards the short length, is it towards side of your mat, towards side, right? Short side. of
You
your mat.
can say to the short edge of your mat,
Edge.
you could say 90 degrees to the right, or
Okay.
whatever you want. Whatever makes sense. And what else?
Bring the arms out.
Spread your arms.
Take your left foot to a 45-degree angle facing your front foot.
Yeah. What I'll say is turn your right toes out and left toes in slightly.
Yes.
But
That
again,
makes-
it's
that's
not.
easier to follow.
And then anything with, and again, also, this is another thing I want to say. When you're teaching a hatha class, especially if you have regulars who take your class, you do not need to talk through it, but we're just, obviously.
Yeah.
used to this. So what about alignment with her feet? What's important? She's got it. perfectly, but what's good about where her feet are located in relation to each other?
And her front heel is at the center of her back foot.
Yeah, in the middle of the arch, right, good.
So it's a warrior two stance.
It's
Her
kind,
feet, right?
yeah, actually, it's, that's kind of how you would prep for warrior two as well. Raise the arms, shoulder level, palms down,
Sure,
and
your
then,
hips are facing the wide edge of the mat.
yeah, and the only thing I'll say about that is as I've gotten, as I've taught, they used to tell you to pretend like you're between two plates of glass. There's actually a meme about that that's hilarious. But now I feel like for me, a slight rotation of that left hip in just slightly,
I can see,
because it's just,
yeah.
it just is, I don't know, it just, it feels more correct than two plates of glass. Okay, so back with our arms out, then what do we wanna do? Now, what do we do from here? What's something we can do?
Reach toward the front of the mat.
What's the front of the mat?
Oh,
The short edge
Short
of the
edge
mat?
of the mat.
Reach out through it, okay, good.
Reach as far as you can.
without rotating your hips. Is that how you get that, what somebody's saying is hinge, that was you,
A
Megan,
hinge.
yesterday, you're using that word hinge.
And you begin.
Your hips, I guess,
Mhm.
Reach forward.
forward.
Well, yeah, and then I think,
Because that movement is kind of like, that's what, like, how do you say that, you know?
This is where the hinge comes in, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like to say act as if you're sliding across the counter until you can't go any further.
yes.
Oh, okay.
That's great, okay, and then what?
And then release your front hand to your leg, wherever you can.
Let's talk about a few modifications here, you can come back down if you're comfortable.
You
You know,
know,
you're like
I'll
a
come back
triangle. What if you have a student who can't come down very far with that right hand?
Use a block.
Use a block in front of the foot, and what else, where else can you put your right hand?
By your thigh.
Your right hand.
Yeah, you're right.
So it can go where hers is in front, or what if she can't go, what if someone can't go down that far?
Move it up.
To in front of your knee.
Yeah, like up
Rest
higher,
on the
back by
shin.
your knee.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you can even come up, I mean, really, you could come up above your knee too, if they're, I would not right on top of it, but if you've got someone who really doesn't have range of motion, that's a possibility as well. What about a modification with that upper arm? What if you have a student who has shoulder issues? So hold that arm up again, and they can't lift their arm that high. Yeah, you can put a hand on your hip. Yeah, that's a great one. Wrap it behind you, so the back of your hand is on your sacrum. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, go ahead and come out of that. We didn't really walk through the setup instruction. I realized as we were into it, it's not gonna be that smooth. We'll keep trying this. I may have you go to the other side and we'll try again in a sec, but what about, so what if, okay, well, let's back up and go ahead and just come on into it. Come on into triangle on that side. Where does that top arm need to be?
Or over her, centered over her shoulder.
Because it's a little bit
It's
what?
behind.
A little bit behind, so a little more at 12 o'clock. So you were right up and down, but just bring it more toward the front of the room, just back it, yeah, there we go. And where can her head be? If her head can't, her gaze is up, which is fine, but not everyone's gonna be able to do that.
Forward would be
straight ahead, or
Her foot.
down at her foot. So you've got options for the neck as well, or the head. And then, what are some of the muscles that you are stretching in this posture? Some of the key muscles?
Your side.
Your side. What else?
Back of your leg.
Back of your leg, inner thigh, hamstring.
Your arms.
Yeah, well, definitely your arms, your shoulders.
Chest.
Where are we strengthening?
Abdomen.
Hamstrings.
Mhm.
Core too.
Hip and the core as well. Okay, DT, you can back off of that. You're probably like, oh my gosh. Also, you're strengthening the ankles as well.
Yeah.
The ankles have to be really strong.
Side, I felt the side body stretch a lot.
And the
Like
other
a
thing,
hand.
yeah, that you, and you feel more on one side than the other, 'cause that'll
I'm
be.
more flexible on the first side I did,
Mhm.
then one side is a little more tight, which is normal, right?
Oh,
Your process,
gosh, yes, absolutely. And you were talking, Kate, about the hinging. That's a good point in triangle, or in some of these standing postures where you're doing the lateral movement, where you don't wanna bend from you're not curving your upper spine, you
Yeah.
are doing that reach out
Yeah.
first, and more hinging from that hip.
Oh, right.
So that spine is extended. So, okay, we'll revisit the whole setup, instruct, refine, release, but I do want to ask also about, when we were thinking about Tadasana and establishing the neutral spine alignment, so you've got the lumbar curve, the thoracic curve, and the cervical curve. And starting at the base, you're drawing the navel center to the spine, firming the abdomen, moving up. You're broadening across the shoulder blades, drawing the shoulder blades down, drawing the low ribs in, and you're lengthening the neck. When you're in triangle pose, how do we help students? How do we cue students to activate that center here? So DT, go ahead and come into triangle. And then what can we do here to establish awareness in the pelvis, abdomen? What are some cues?
I was gonna say tuck your tailbone, but we said yesterday.
No, I know, that's such a no-no,
Yeah.
but what I hear Kate say and what I've started saying is hug, just a slight hug around the tailbone. And I've also started saying, draw the navel center to the spine.
Okay.
And like, you can use both, draw the navel center to the spine and slight hug around the tailbone. And then press into the feet, and when you press into the feet and do that, you really feel this energetics, I don't know, it's like a whoosh. Yeah, and there's a lot more stability. And then you can soften the left knee and just come on out of that, yeah.
So just that slight tug around the tailbone and
I totally stole that from
something else.
Kate.
I know there was something.
Draw
else.
the navel center to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
spine.
that's-
I read in some of, like, if you look, if you come to, why don't we open to page 79 and look at some of the language in Mastering the Basics. Take a look at some of this. And you'll see in Mastering the Basics, I was noticing this, it's basically divided up into setup, instruct, refine, release. So from mountain pose, bring the feet a leg's length apart. You've got that, you said that correctly, pivot 90 degrees, the right foot 90 degrees to the right, turn the left foot in slightly. 79. And it talks about tuning in to the pelvis and keeping the pelvis level and facing forward, sensing a feeling of openness through the front of the pelvis and thighs. And then with one smooth movement, you broaden across, lift the arms and broaden across the shoulders, lower, oh, I see, and reach out and down. Let's see. Now in step B, now lower the left arm and place the forearm on the low back. They have you start with the forearm on the low back. Exhaling, shift the pelvis to the left and move the shoulders to the right. Bring the right shoulder out over the leg. Continue that movement. And then it talks about where to maintain, where to look your head. And then there's the refinement there in step C. It says keep both thighs active, further widening the pelvis. And then there's the refinement on step D to deepen the downward movement, broaden from the center of the chest and lengthen through the left arm, elongate the spine. And then there's the release, that last paragraph. I didn't think they did the greatest job of activating the navel center. But they do talk about the pelvis and bringing awareness to the pelvis and the neutral spine and the spinal extension.
It's interesting that they show and describe actually placing the hand on the leg. I always
Yes.
thought it was meant to be like in front of it.
Again,
not
it's-
leaning.
there's so many different rights. Like there are so many different ways to do it. And so let's talk about that. So if you're teaching a class, what is likely going to be more accessible to more people? Hand on the shin or hand in front?
On the shin.
On the shin.
Yeah, because you can, that's what I'm thinking, you can bear a little more, you can place a little more weight here. This may be the next challenge
Yeah.
for someone who needs, a little more of a challenge, to place it in front and press the hand into the calf muscle.
I feel like it could be good to, like, instead of instructing people first, put their hand in between or like on their ankle. If you start with like sliding down, that way no one's like going in and out, like you can stop where you need to.
Yes, that's actually a great thing. And especially when you've never taught a class before, or if they're real beginners, that people don't know how far they can go down.
That's right.
And they just are like, I just have to get my body there. And then what happens when I'm gonna place my hand here, even though I can't do it correctly? What happens to this part?
It can
Your hips
Turn down.
pop out.
Yep. It's like this.
And you see the numbers.
You see it all the time. So instead, I like that. So so just sliding, how long can you keep your torso? Because that's the other part, is keeping your shoulders square as you tip. And then, oops, I'm gonna have to start caving if I want to keep moving my hand. So yeah, just feel that. And you could take time and just play with that. Just tell your class, let's play with that. Just slide down and come back up and feel where it is right for your body. And then again, I kind of like how they started with the hand behind the back, because that's another thing students will do is, I think they think the goal is to get their hand down far, then this gets over here, and then the shoulders, the squaring of the shoulders doesn't happen. But if you keep your hand back behind and just slide down, you can keep those shoulders. It's a little easier to keep your shoulders square, and then you can extend the arm. Yeah, good point. That's a really good point. What are some other things that can happen in triangles? So what are some other things you might see students do? Starting with the feet, what might happen? What might you see in class for people who don't really know what they're doing?
Misalign the feet.
Yeah, they might be like this, you know, they might be a forward
Or like, too,
like in, in or too far out. Yep. They might have too short a stance, like this.
Like you bend your knee,
They might what?
bend your knee.
Yeah, and actually, what I'll say about that is I've noticed Kate saying, keep a soft bend in the knee, just because another caution for standing postures is locking into the joint, especially if you're hyperextended. You don't want to lock into the joint, because then prana can't flow. It gets jammed. So keeping just sort of a soft bend in the knee is okay, a micro bend. What else can happen? What about arms?
Shoulders aren't relaxed.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, you just said that. I was like, oops, relaxed. Yeah, shoulders not relaxed. So they may be up here. Yep. And
They
then,
might not be activated through both arms, the back
Yeah.
arm could be dropping,
yep,
unaware.
broaden the collarbone, draw the shoulder blades down, really energize through the hands, reach in both directions.
And sometimes stop breathing because you're focusing so much.
Yes. That's another great thing, just, you know, coming into the posture and saying, okay, let's focus on the breath here. Yeah, and on that, maintaining that smooth, you know, diaphragmatic breath. Also, the pelvis, I think, can go wacky here. This is why we do the centering and warm up. It's to bring awareness to, oh, I actually have a pelvis. And this, I can activate it and it can help me energize. So that's the drawing the navel center to the spine, hugging around the tailbone. What can happen with the head?
Stress sometimes.
Yeah.
Keep it-
So like this. So if we want to keep a neutral spine, we want to make our head's not just dropping. So sometimes, and if the neck gets tense, you can turn and look down, look straight. Where's my head in space? And then if you want to turn and look up, but I wouldn't do that unless, you know, you're working with, you know, people who have the rest of their body. If they're comfortable with the rest of their body in space. So yeah, we talked about actions and movements, strengthening, what's, okay, we talked about strengthening, what's stretching. We talked about physical alignment, a little bit about the breath and that posture. And we talked about some common misalignments, so the spine, head, and neck, locking the joints, hyperextending the joints, and modifications. So just a little more about modifications. We talked about the hand placement. You mentioned the block, deep, deep. We talked about the one hand on the back of the sacrum. I think we hit good ones. Let's try one more time and let's do set up, instruct, refine, release. So do you want to do set up, instruct, refine, release? I don't know if this is going to work. And then on the second posture, we'll have you all work our way that way. And Meg. Okay, so. And the setup for Trikonasana. Trikonasana. Yeah.
You will turn towards the long and edge of your mat. Yeah, in the center, yes, good. And you will placing your, let's see. Spreading your legs about a length, a foot,
Legs length.
a leg's length apart,
Good.
ish. I love it when Adrian says it was sort of like ish, you know, like not necessarily too far, you know, so. Yeah, and that's this, no.
And I
have
would
said it right?
say maybe with the arms.
Okay,
They're gray areas.
okay. And reaching your arms, your right and left arms out to the sides. And feeling like your hands are going east, west, or whatever, pulling in opposite directions.
Perfect. Awesome. Instruct.
You're gonna turn your right foot towards the short edge of the mat and let your back foot turn in a bit, about 45 degrees. Reach forward, keeping your hips aligned, and then you'll hinge at your waist and start sliding your hand down your shin. 3, 5, stop all the way down to the inside of your right ankle. That's okay.
Good. And what are some refinements?
Okay, so you want to continue, make sure you're breathing. You want to look either forward, down, or up, depending on what you're comfortable with. You want to make sure you're not locking your knee, but you have a soft bend in your front knee. And continue to breathe.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what can we do here about the navel center?
Oh, yeah.
Want to make sure that your hips are continuing to face forward and that you're focusing on bringing your energy from your legs up through your body.
There you go. Excellent.
Can we use the word revolve? Like revolve, and be sure that your hips are revolved forward. We talk about like that, nothing like having a headlight here and a headlight.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate here?
Um,
Or is that not?
if that
even
makes
possible?
sense, if that is a word that makes sense to you, then I would use it. I think of revolved as twisting, kind of
Okay,
turning.
okay.
But I'm not saying it's wrong.
But that's actually another, that's a.
Yeah, there's a
term, isn't it?
revolved
Yeah.
triangle, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Come back down and then we'll have Bridget.
Right.
Bridget, I mean Gretchen, I'm so sorry.
Okay, so, you're going to ground down through your feet and ensure that your legs are strong to support you. You can imagine, that a hand is reaching down to your top hand, pulling you back to standing.
Oh, that's good, that's great,
Yeah, and sometimes like,
Hand on hip.
I like that.
as opposed to.
You could do that and
Or bend different.
yeah, that's what I do.
Okay.
I do that for myself
Yeah.
just because
It's
sometimes
safer.
it hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel it hurting. I have weirdnesses with my back.
Yeah.
So I just soften the front knee and lift back up. Okay. And again, like you're not gonna when you're teaching class, you're not going to be doing all of this talking because a lot of your, unless you're teaching a true beginner's class and then, you're a trooper.
Yes.
You're gonna
Not
wake
very
up
stressful.
tomorrow morning and it's gonna be like, oh, you guys did great on that.
I feel like all of our first classes are going to consist of a lot of Trikonasana.
Yes,
Like we got that one, right?
Actually, I'm glad we started with Trikonasana, and I know I asked you to choose it and then I chose it. But it says in here, or maybe it says in one of my manuals that doing Trikonasana before the side angle, which I thought we'd go to next, since it's also in here. is good because the side angle is a deeper hip stretch and Trikonasana kind of warms you up. There's no wrong or right way to do it. I mean, you can do the standing postures in any order that makes sense to you. But yeah, I just noticed that in one of the books. So side angle is on page 130. Yes. And yeah, this also breaks it down. If you want to just glance through just to pick out, it's just on pages 130 and 131.
Oh, yeah, that's fun, because it kind of gets you, like, I just remember really early on, like, going, oh, thank God, I can put my, I
Yes.
can rest my elbow on this knee. I
Yeah.
like this pose, you know?
Yeah,
And then eventually not be having to put so much weight on it.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's what you notice as you make your way, as you, little by little, you make your way and you realize, oh, I developed strength here and I don't have to, use my weight in that supporting hand. And you can see here, the hand on the thigh or the hand behind, there are lots of modifications.
So
But-
these are both standing poses and both for hips and pelvis. It's just the way
So
they have it in the book is like, this is just an additional.
this is,
It's like
Okay.
so much weight, it's like in a read section.
oh, yeah, so what you're gonna find in this book is that sequence 1, which starts on page, what is that? Page 20 or 19. Okay, sequence 1 is like a real beginner class. I mean, you're not gonna see a ton of asanas that you normally will see. You see a lot of what's called joints and glands exercises to get joint mobility. So this would be like something, this first asana sequence that they show is just building joint awareness, joint mobility.
48.
Yeah, all the way through, it was, back on page 19, all the way through page. And there's a section on breathing. And then sequence 2 is starting on page 67. So this is called deepening and strengthening. So even this to you all, because you all have had lots of training, even this sequence may not seem challenging to you, but it's got really good information. You see your chair poses and your child poses and fire series, cobras, a few standing postures, but nothing like you see in like Kate's class or, even my Sunday Hapa one class, yeah. So they're just a couple of the standing postures that we're going over today. So I don't know if that even answered your question, Christine.
I don't really even know, but I assumed it was just like, these are like added on to like that basic.
The basic,
Sequence.
oh, yeah.
I just was wondering if there was a reason like it was like so much later, but it sounds like it's just the way they organize.
Yeah, exactly, it is. And the second sequence is just slightly more advanced, let's say. Okay, let's look at side angle. So who wants to do side angle? Who wants to be the model for side angle?
Hey, Susanna, I'm so sorry to break in here, but I'm gonna make my way over to the field, so I'll be back in a bit.
Okay, no problem.
Thank
See
you.
later. And I just
Bye.
wanted to make sure I was recording. Yeah, I am. Okay. Who's gonna be our model for side angle?
Oh, there.
Okay, yay. All right, Tracy. So actually, okay, Meg's not there, so we don't need to. Well, actually, do you want to come over here? Do you want to come up on my mat? Or bring your mat over if you don't want to use my mat? It's up to you. All right, so should we kind of do it the way we did it before? You guys we'll start off by doing the setup, instruct, refine, release, and then stop if we need to and then come back to it. So let's do backwards. So Christiane, set up, instruct, refine, and Evie, release. So side angle, what are we doing? What are we, set up, Christiane?
Yes, so face the long edge of your mat. And stand, place your feet a leg's length apart. Turn your.
No,
That's a really short
And then turn your front foot 90 degrees and your back foot 45
Which is her
degrees.
front and which is her back? When she's facing forward?
Okay, turn your left foot 90 degrees and your right foot 45 degrees
45 degrees which way?
towards the front of the mat.
You could also just say, turn your, I've heard turn your right toes in slightly or turn your left heel out.
Okay,
Push your left heel out a little.
Got it.
But you can also use degrees, but
and then bring your arms up to a T. And I feel like that's the end of setup.
yeah, I think that's good. You could, yeah, that's good. Okay.
Okay, so you're going to want to be mindful of having your hips facing the long edge of the mat. And then bend your left knee about 90 degrees over your left ankle. And you can drop your left hand or your left elbow to your left knee. And extend your right arm overhead and really kind of think of lengthening through your shoulders and collarbone and really feeling like one long line of energy along the left side of your body, like from your side of your left foot all the way up through your fingertips. And if your neck is uncomfortable, you can feel free to look out over the long edge of your mat or look down at the floor. And be aware of drawing your abdominals back toward your spine, lengthening through the backside of your body.
With the upper arm, the only thing I would ask, I have my students who have shoulder issues, I have a pain, yeah.
Sorry,
So that's okay, but there are a lot of people who cannot go over that far, so you could give options. You
Yeah.
could say 12 o'clock or extended,
Nice. 2 o'clock. Well, there's your long line of energy that I was looking for anyway.
And-
That was the line.
Yeah, there we go, and then turn the palms slightly toward your face, yeah. So it's, instead of facing that way, it's turned slightly, there we go. Nice, and then refinement, if Tracy, you can have it.
If you want to deepen the pose, you could try to reach your left arm down to the floor. Behind your leg, that's what I always think. Or as far as is comfortable with you. Remember to continue to breathe and keep your neck and butt tightened, so you want to make sure you relax and you need to breathe. And make sure that your hips remain facing toward the front of your mat.
Nice. And Evie, you can, there are a bunch of different right ways. Evie, she came out, so you're good. It's okay. Or not.
And to release, you can just wiggle your arms back up, stand, and release your legs.
Yeah, so, yeah, let's talk about, that was really good. You guys are very good.
Sorry, I wanted to
This-
refine this one, I think.
That's okay.
Yeah, I
Is
wasn't,
there-
I got lost.
There aren't any.
Lost in instruction.
I feel like,
Very confident, yeah.
there aren't any hard and fast, like line, there aren't any lines.
Right.
It's just like it kind of weaves, especially your parts.
Yeah.
Kind of weaves together. But yeah, so different options that Kate was mentioning for the hands, once you're here. So you can have the hand here. Where else can you have the hand? Or the left, we'll say in this case, left.
Down on the ground.
Yeah, down on the ground in the back or what?
Or in the front.
Or in the front. I like to do this and it's not a posture, but I hold my ankle and it helps me open my hip, but it's probably cheating. But what else could we have here prop wise?
No.
Yeah, block in the front or the back.
Sure.
And then, with the arm, what's the options for this arm?
Yeah, at the hip or
Oh,
behind
do
your
it.
head. Back
Stretched
hand,
out.
behind your-
You could do a bind.
Yeah, you could do that bind, you could reach around
Right.
and hold on to your thigh. I can't quite do it on that side. And then the diagonal.
And you can raise your bottom arm too. Gotta be
Yes.
tall.
Oh gosh, yes, I forgot about that. So if you're
That's really strange.
wanting to
I love that one.
challenge students who need a challenge, or this, have you seen that before?
No.
Yeah,
That's neat.
that
looks like that would help keep your shoulders.
square,
Yeah.
yeah. This, and that's another thing, let's look at shoulders, so we'll did arms, head, issues with the head.
Yeah, I always, in those side poses, I don't, sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like my head, like, do I look up? Like, I know where to look, but I don't know that it necessarily feels correct. So then I start looking down and then I'm forward, and then I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
feel better up. Like,
It's-
is that a normal thing?
Oh, God, yeah, because you're, the whole thing, you know, is about learning where your body is in space. And so that just happens over time and feeling, what does it feel like to have a neutral, you know, have your cervical spine in alignment with the rest of your body. You know, and yeah, you'll see a lot of this with the head for sure. What about with the shoulders? So triangle and this posture. What are you gonna see with the shoulders for people who, this is hard?
Collapse in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open your shoulders.
Yeah, if they're not stretched out here, it's probably gonna feel like, you know, they're gonna wanna cave forward.
Lengthen your side body.
Yeah, lengthen your side body, and that's the other thing is, and they mentioned this in Mastering the Basics, is kind of just like triangle, you're not bending from the waist, you're hinging from the hip.
Okay.
Do you want to get up and try that?
And I think that like lengthen side body and spine.
Yes, lengthen that's a great cue. So lengthen the side, so see what it feels like to do, just bend into it. And then the difference, feel like you've got kind of a brace, and then you're just hinging from that hip. There's a definite difference in keeping, it helps keep that spine, like you said, DT, that spine lengthened underneath. Yeah.
I think another good cue is to not put your weight into your front leg or
Huh.
into your right leg.
Excessively. so.
Because then you're gonna collapse the shoulder too,
Yeah.
Good point.
and you're not strengthening your leg.
You mean not put the
The arm weight.
arm? Yeah,
I was
I
actually.
agree.
Yeah, so you're not bearing any weight here, this is more like for your support.
So what could you do if you notice your students are letting the sinking? Well, what could you cue them?
Well, you could have them try to take it away to see what happens to
Kind of
them.
like in Cobra, when you lift your hands.
Yeah, right?
You could just let it hover for a
Yeah.
moment
And
and just
then
see.
you get the activation through your legs.
Right. Another thing I was gonna say was thinking about the different ways to, here it again, it's instruct / refine. Is you'll start hearing teachers, like Kate says this a lot, press through the feet,
Yeah.
draw the navel, and she works her way up, draw the navel center in, hug around the tailbone, broaden the chest. So it's like this, just the cue, it kind of organizes what you're gonna say. So, yeah. Let's talk about what else. So what about strengthening in this, in side angle? What's being strengthened in side angle that wasn't in triangle? Quads. Yeah. The quad will go on fire. The quad definitely. You want to do that to the other side? Tracy, come on back, and I feel like we need to even your body out.
We can't stand asymmetry.
Yes. So, so the quads, what about stretching? Quads and ankles are strengthening on the side.
Sorry, because that's triangle too.
And.
Yeah.
Arms. Yeah, the arms and the bicep.
Yeah, I feel like there's more
The
Yeah. And what's different though, like so triangle, you're tipping. But in side angle, so what else?
More of a reach.
More of that stretch down the,
Yeah,
that helps you feel into the side of the body.
And then that.
And-
Strings.
Right, and
That way.
I love feeling the connection between that line of energy from my fingertips to the outside of my foot.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, that's another thing about, well, it doesn't say up there the list of benefits, but just feeling your body in space. Oh, there's my foot. Oh, it's connected all the way up.
Yes.
You know, that line of energy. Okay, let's do it. Let's teach Tracy again. Using set up, instruct, align, or refine, release. So now we've got to start in the middle. So Gretchen, set up, and then Colleen, instruct, refine, and release.
Release, okay.
Yes. Okay. So what are we doing?
We're going to come to the center of our mat, facing the long edge, and step your feet apart, one adult leg length. Adult leg.
That's good.
Okay, and you can turn your right foot to the short edge of the mat, and you can turn your left foot to face the right foot, or step the left heel back. And then extend your arms out to shoulder height. Head up.
Excellent. Who had instruct? Colleen?
Okay,
Is
so
this supposed to be at a angle?
I turned it slightly in. It feels like it's turned in slightly, but when you really look at it, it's not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily.
Okay.
Okay, so I want you to begin to reach towards your right. As if a string is pulling you forward. Which one am I doing?
You're
No,
doing
no,
side
no,
angle.
that's okay.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I know, I'm like, okay.
Wait,
I want you to begin to bend your, no, stay straight. Okay. I want you to begin to bend your right leg about 90 degrees. And then I want you to begin to turn your arms, go down and put your elbow on your thigh and bring your left arm over your head as far as is comfortable for you. And remain there. That's the
Good.
instruction. You can refine it. Sorry, refine it.
Make sure that your hand is facing, your top hand is facing down toward the ground. If you'd like to deepen the stretch, you can move your right arm towards the floor behind your ankle. Or you can also bring it up in line with your other arm as though you're holding a beach ball. Be sure that you are pulling your navel center toward your spine to keep your hips facing the sidewall. And bring your neck up just a little bit so it is in line with your spine.
supposed to come out of it with that?
Yeah, you can, and
Okay,
really,
release to come out of it. Put your left hand on your hip and straighten out your right leg out. And then bring your legs together and flip like that.
good,
And watch the
good.
teacher.
Excellent, excellent, good job, everyone. So, one thing I guess I haven't emphasized, because we've been we've been breaking down kind of the structure of the posture, is just one of the refinements, or just one of the cues being the breath.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. And just, so when we move into teaching it, in just a little bit, teaching on your own, just make note to use the breath. Now, in the Mastering the Basics, they go through everything, like inhale, lift the arms, exhale, reach the, and I sometimes do that and sometimes I don't. I do it a lot with sun salutations, but I don't always cue the breath until we get into the posture.
Yeah.
Notice your breath at your navel center or at your nose or whatever. But that's huge, is because the breath is what's helping you stay present and build, bring awareness to what's going on and build energy and prana. So be sure to pay attention to that. What else? I know what I wanted to ask you. Another common thing that can happen. This is for warriors and warrior 2 and side angle. Is when I bend, let's say I'm gonna bend my right knee to come into warrior 2 or side angle. What can happen as I'm coming into the bend? What do you think?
Your knee could go too far.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what wasn't what I was thinking, but that's a good point. Let me back up and then I'll come to what I was gonna lead you to.
Conscious.
So another reason that you want to have the feet legs distance apart is if my legs are here and I come into warrior, my knee is going to track way over my ankle, and you want to be able to stack your joints. So if my legs are wider, then when I bend my knee, it's going to just naturally track over my ankle. So that was good. Another thing is this. What I see students doing is wah, wah. So I way over exaggerated that, okay? So it's just that hip awareness, that external rotation of the hip. You want to make sure that, possibly one of your cues, either as you're coming into it, is be aware to keep that right hip open as it tracks over the right knee. Or once you're in here, check in with that right hip. Is your right knee tracking directly over the right ankle? Make sure your knee is not caving in. I don't think too many people go in the opposite direction. So that is definitely something to pay attention to. You want to, everyone stand up again and watch that in your own body. So face the wide side of your mat, legs distance apart, arms at a T position with the palms down, turn the left toes in and the right toes out, within 80 degrees. And then, or 90 degrees. That would be insane to turn it all the way back. And then bend into the right knee, tracking the right knee directly over the right ankle. And just notice that right hip. And if the knee is rotated directly over, really it should be tracking over that, directly over the right ankle, but tracking in line with that right foot. Yeah. Good, and come out of that. So keeping Yeah, and then turn the right toes in and the left toes out. And let's see if it's different on this side. As you come into the bend in the left knee, notice if, you know, you have to adjust and turn that left hip open a little more. Good. And then you can come out of that. Did you notice anything? Yeah, they're different. Yeah, I know. Our bodies are interesting, for sure. Okay, and so, let me see where we are here in the notes. I'm just about ready to break into groups and think about a posture you want to teach. Alignment. Oh, I wanted to ask you about what, you can sit down again. What about counter poses for standing poses? I'm supposed to talk about counter poses and I hadn't considered what a counter pose for standing pose. But what do you think could be a counter pose? Something to balance all the work you do in standing. You know, the heating, the energizing, if a counter pose, you know, is the opposite, kind of.
What comes next in the sequencing after standing poses?
Well, I'm gonna refer, the reason I'm referring to this is because I teach an hour-long class, so I don't always do every single part.
Yeah.
But it's, I think it's abdominal strengthening and energizing.
Okay,
Let's see.
so we
Does
could,
anyone have that handy? I wanna make-
it is.
Okay, yeah. And again, also, just a little word about the sequencing. This sequence is gold to me. I love this sequence and there's a reason for this sequencing. The way it is physically, energetically. But, you know, depending on the type of class you're teaching, you may, for instance, do a little abdominal energizing in the centering and warm-ups. And you may do an active inversion and, you know, but the basics are there. Like I always do centering and warm-ups, standing postures. To me, and one of the active inversions is down dog.
Yeah.
So that gets in there, you know. Sometimes I do abdominal strengthening and energizing. Then we go to back bends. And I combine twists and seated postures and forward bends. Like I don't do, okay, now we're doing twist. Okay, now we're doing, I mix and match those three. Those are all seated. And then restorative inversions and systematic relaxation. So what do you think about a squat after? Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I think, wow, that I didn't even think about that. I think that would be awesome.
As a counter pose for
I don't know if it's
standing.
necessarily a counter pose, but like I'm trying to think of like what, and I feel like
Mhm.
we would have really opened the hips at that point, and it's
Mhm.
kind of like a grounding, kind of like a nice transition into being able to do abs,
And coming down to the floor.
the mat.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna ask Kate about that. I mean, I don't think there are any wrong or right postures, but let's just think about, let's keep that as, that to me might be an advanced thing, because not a lot of people can come, like in a Hatha one, you're gonna see a lot of people who, like their
Yeah.
knees hurt.
Yeah.
And their heels can't come down, and, you know, it just anatomy wise, it's hard for everyone to do that. Or guys,
What about a wide leg forward? That's what I was saying.
that's part of the standing postures.
Oh, so that's.
That's one of the standing postures. So, and I had to look this up, I was like, oh,
So you can't use the standing pose as the counter?
I guess.
Yeah, that's what I.
I guess you could.
Giant pose.
Stop.
That's what they were saying.
It
Yeah.
releases the
That's
back
difficult.
and.
That's what, yeah, exactly. The
Most
default
releasing
counter.
back, maybe.
Yeah, releasing the back, bringing your attention, you've done all this energizing work. And then, but another one was down dog.
Yeah.
And, because, yeah, down dog is supposed to be a restful pose and isn't when you're building strength toward that, but downward facing dog. And what I'll do sometimes, and again, this is just my way sometimes, is let's say we do the right side for standing postures. And then we inevitably end up back in down dog before the other side. And sometimes I have my students come to their knees and rest and notice the effects of what we did on one side. And then, because it's all about having students build awareness of what's deeper and deeper layers of themselves. And then we'll come back up. I might have, just dangle and roll up and then do the other side and then do a down dog and a child's pose just to kind of. So I didn't ever consider that necessarily a counter pose, but I guess it is. Yeah, but I think the squats one is a really good one too. It can be, for some people, it's so relaxing and it feels so good. Okay, I think I covered.
So not the forward fold? I feel like they're similar to down dog and child's pose in
The forward fold.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say forward fold too, is a counter pose. Because at that point, you're, unless there's an active forward fold where you're like,
what'd you say, wide leg?
just,
Yeah.
you said, yeah, the wide-legged forward fold. I'm thinking of just like letting our go here.
Okay.
Yeah, again, there are multiple right ways to do things, thankfully. Yeah, and because otherwise our bodies would be injured all the time. Okay, so those are some counter poses. And we're going to here in just a little bit move into practice teaching on your own. So I wanted to ask you what you thought of this. You've got the 4 steps to teaching the pose. I was supposed to write that on the board, but you have notes, and you seem to be good with that. I'm gonna review some common cues before we get started. And then, do you think you will divide into 2 pairs and a triad? I'm pointing, but you guys can divide it any way you want. Do you think you'll each take one posture? And do you think you want like 5 or 10 minutes just to get your thoughts together before you work with your partner? Or what would be helpful for you? You just want to go into it and kind of work on your own. Because I have, what I think we need to do is then we'll take a little break, stretch our legs, then come back and give you like 15 minutes each just to kind of talk through things like we did before. You can do the setup, instruct, refine, release, maybe practice it a couple of times. Talk about, what your experience was like from your perspective. Partners can give feedback. And then we'll switch and then we'll come back together and share out. But you'll have a nice chunk of time to do this.
We can pick any of those.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that it would be nice if we hit all of these. So is anyone like married to a particular one? We obviously didn't deconstruct all of them, but we still have like tree pose and Ardha Chandrasana. So Vrikshasana and Ardha Chandrasana are the balances.
I'd like to do tree pose.
Want to do tree?
I would
Okay,
too.
tree pose.
I would too.
So we've got a tree that's covered. What do you want?
What's
It's Side Parsvakonasana.
And Ardha Chandrasana is what?
Half moon. You wanna, who said half moon? Okay, Evie is gonna do half moon, we've got that covered. I mean, you can, other people can do these as well, I just wanna make sure. Because, and Tadasana is just, this is just,
No.
yeah, we don't really teach that. I mean, we're semi-teaching it because we started in that posture. Anyone want warrior two? I'll do warrior. Okay, Connie, warrior two. Trikonasana, you had
Because
lots
I
of
got it.
experience. And do we have everything? Do we do side, extended side angle? Did you say you were doing that, Gretchen?
I didn't, but didn't we just do side angle?
We did, but you can pick it to, if you want to teach it again.
No, I wanna do tree pose.
Tree pose, okay, we've got another tree pose. What else?
So I was interested in tree pose, but do we need?
That's fine, you can- Parsvakonasana, anyone wanna do? Parsvakonasana, you don't have, to. We did deconstruct that a lot. I think at this point, we've got someone teaching everything except Parsvakonasana. I can do, you don't have to. Do you have this, you wanna try it again? Okay,
we
we
have
can
to
do that.
teach everything, right? It doesn't matter, we have to teach everything.
And I feel like, Gretchen, I feel like
We
I've called
just
you
learned tree
Bridget.
in my
Have
class.
I called you Bridget multiple times today?
No,
Okay, because at my time, I had this thought, like,
no,
because Bridget is Gretchen's friend, and we were talking about Bridget, and then Bridget got in my mind. Okay, so plan of attack here is to take a little break, if you want, to stretch your legs and eat something. And then we're just gonna divide and conquer and go into our little pods. Do you know who's working with whom? Got we need 3 people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you 3 and then you 2, and you 2? Okay, great. And Meg is gonna join us at some point, but I'm gonna have to give her a different assignment. So why don't we take 5 minutes and just get a mental, physical break, and then you can go anywhere in here that is, I don't think we put the massage room, or the rooms inside the massage room are open, but you can go out and choose. Because I don't see how long.
I know.
did she say 10 minutes?
I just,
I think so.
she was saying that.
Did you say 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
And then it just
Just like a 5-minute break. Like we'll come back at 25, 26 after. And